Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lasuk b'divrei Torah. Varevna Adonai Eloheinu et divrei Toratcha b'finu u'fi amcha beit Yisrael. V'niyeh anachnu v'tzetzenu v'tzetzei amcha beit Yisrael, kulanu yodei shemecha v'lemdei Toratecha lishma. Baruch atah Adonai hamlemei Torah le'amo Yisrael. Amen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher b'cha banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten Torah.
Amen.
Okay.
Amen.
Amen. All right. Where we left off last time, we were going to discuss Rav Oshia. Okay. We discussed obviously, and we said. Let me just go directly to it. We're on 4b1, guys, 4b1. And at the bottom of 4b1, on the right-hand side, it starts off with the following. It says, the Mishnah lists 4 primary damages. The Gemara now cites a pair of brisos that teach expanded list of primary damages. And the first brisa is as follows. It says, Rav Oshia taught in a brisa there are 13 primary damages. So he's got a list of 13. And what we're going to do is go through his list and see where he's coming from. So let me tell you how he got the 13. The first list in the Mishnah is 4. So in his 13 includes the 4. So just remember the first is ox hashor, pit habor, mave, which Rav Oshia refers to actually as man, himself also, and have, which is fire. So those are the 4. Then what we did is we said that there were another 5. So what we did is we touched on the 5 last time. And if you remember, those actual 5 had to do with the case of the first one, guys, was nezek. It was the actual damage. So this occurred whether an ox damaged a man or a man damaged a man. But if a man damaged a man, there were 4 additional payments. The one payment was for pain, sar. The other payment that you had was shevet. It was for, convalescing. You had the payment in terms of the medical bills, and you had the payment for humiliation. So those were the 4 additional payments, right? Yeah. Now, he wants to add on that. So what you have is, including nezek and the 4 additional payments of man injuring man, those are 5 payments. And then you had the 4 payments from the Mishnah, those are 9. And now he's coming to bring another 4 different types of payments. So again, 4 from the Mishnah, 5 of man damaging man. In other words, actual damage plus 4 additional. So that is 9, and an extra 4 damages that Rav Oshia is bringing in the brisa here. And that brings the total to 13. So what are the damages he's talking about? So he's talking about a damage of a shomer. A shomer is a person that watches another person's property. Okay? And I'm going to go through these 4 categories now and explain to you what they actually are. So what they are in English, shomer in Hebrew, shomrim, for multiple, is actually, if you say you're shomrei Shabbos, it means you guarding the Sabbath. So it's a guardian. In English, we refer to the word as a custodian. Okay? And the sources that are given in terms of the scriptural sources for the 4 shomrim are in Bava Metzia 94b. Okay, and each of the 4 custodians have their own form of responsibility. And what happens is as follows, just conceptually, is that the more you doing the person a favor in terms of how you looking after their items, the less you're responsible for. The more they're doing you a favor by letting you use their items, the more you're responsible for. Okay, and we're going to go through it, and it's going to make a lot of sense now. So here are your 4 categories. The first one that you've got is what you call the unpaid custodian. Okay? Now, an unpaid custodian is the one that you doing the other person the biggest favor for. Why? He's saying, listen, I've got to go on holiday. I don't have the money to pay you. Can you kindly watch my house and my dog? And if he's going to obligate you legally to the highest degree, you're going to say, listen, pal, I need it like a hole in the head. I don't feel like it. No, thanks. I've got everything to lose and nothing to gain. And he said, but you can do me a favor. We've been friends for years. Yes, I'm friends for years. And suddenly your puppy gets sick and it's 2 grams worth of vet bills. Or your Ming vase suddenly falls off by a gust of wind in the middle of the night in your place. Or some person tries to break in. We're not going to be friends anymore because you're going to want to take me to court. And I'm going to say, listen, I did you a big favor. So I don't think I really want to take this on. Let's keep the friendship and get some other sucker to do it. So what happens legally then is that we don't obligate that person to a very high level because they're doing you a favor by looking after your place. So that's the unpaid custodian. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what the unpaid custodian is actually responsible for. Okay? So if he was negligent about the object in his care, he's obviously responsible for that because that's not an unreasonable thing to do. You know what I'm saying? In other words, if he actually damaged it through sheer stupidity, then it's a bit of a problem. So, for example, he's busy watching your 55-inch screen. He's had 4 beers too many, and he slips, half knocks the TV over, and spills the vodka all over your TV, and it goes zzz, and that's the end of your TV. That's idiocy. That's negligence. He's responsible for that. Okay. Now, he's exempt in 2 other cases. This is an unpaid custodian if it's lost or stolen. Now, we're going to examine what the word lost means. Because what happens is the Gemara also refers to what you call an unpredicted loss as an item being struck by lightning. So we think of a loss as purely if an object, you can't find it anymore. But what it seems to refer to here is something that's lost. In other words, it's no longer rendered in use. You've lost the benefit of that item. So if Fluffy's playing outside and it gets hit by lightning. I had a friend of mine whose dog got hit by lightning. I was 16 at the time. I killed myself laughing. Now, she was distraught and really upset with me. But you got to see the funny side of it. There was Fluffy and then there wasn't. But doesn't engender friendship. So don't do that. But that was what you call, it brings a case of lightning here, unusual. So in that particular case, that's what you call an unusual form of loss. That there is another form of loss is if you've actually misplaced the item, which is not an unusual form. So it says here that if you're negligent in terms of an unpaid guardian, you're responsible, but not if it's lost or stolen. In that case, he's exempt. What we're going to do is, in Bava Metzia 94, please God, when we get to there, we're going to examine what cases of lost or stolen, what case of being lost are you not exempt? Because the simple reason is that if you just lose it outright, there is negligence in that. There is negligence. So we've got to see in what cases you are and what cases you're not. But let's just look at principally that an unpaid custodian, if the object is damaged in repair, he is responsible if he was negligent, but not if it's lost or stolen. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to deal with a paid custodian who has a greater degree of responsibility. So why does he have a greater degree of responsibility? Well, simply because he's getting paid to do the job. So I could turn around to him and say, listen, you didn't do me a favor. And since you earn money for it, you've got a greater degree of responsibility of looking after it, because otherwise, why should I pay you money? Does this make sense so far, guys? Any questions?
Yeah, I just want to ask one question.
Sure.
It probably applies to the paid custodian as well. With the unpaid custodian, if he's in your house and he stays negligent, and he breaks a vase that's worth 100,000 rand, all right? Because this guy's a hell of a wealthy guy, and you're a poor guy. What happens in that particular case? Or is that going to come up?
Okay, so that comes up in Government CA 94B, but just a caveat here is that be very, very careful. Firstly, whose phone is that? Sorry, guys, if you could, you don't have to tell me whose phone it is. Just if we can just mute it just for the time being. There are always balances that the law has by not making sure that the poor person is damaged for life, but by the same token, the rich person can't expect it to have monthly payments of his Porsche at 100 Rand a month. He'll never get his car back. This is one of the reasons that insurance, as I said to you, has been a later financial economic development, because it's taken care of the discrepancy between the rich not extracting the money for their damaged article versus the poor that couldn't afford to repay back. This is exactly why insurance came to the fore. It was practical. But these individual cases of how it's paid is covered in Government CA 94B. All we're doing here in the first Mishnah, Gav, remember, is listing damages. It's chapter 1.
That's
it's a good question. But that will be dealt with. That's not a problem. So a unpaid custodian is known as a shomer chinam. So a shomer is a custodian, a guarder, and a chinam is a baseless custodian. In other words, chinam, which
also means free.
Hatred.
The word also means free. Chinam, yeah.
That's exactly it. In other words, if you're not earning, there's no base. There's no financial base. That's exactly it, Kevin. Thanks, John. We have our guy that actually did well on his UPAN course. So I did a course with Kevin in South Africa of UPAN, and then he did ones in Israel. So he's fluent, much more than
No. Arthur, I think Arthur's the most fluent out of all of us.
Arthur's good at computers. All right. So it's a baseless guardian, meaning there's no financial base to it. And then a shomer zachar, which is it's a paid guardian. Okay, so let's just see what a paid guardian is good at. A paid custodian has a greater degree of responsibility. Okay, and he's responsible even if the item is lost or stolen. Okay, but if the item is lost due to an unavoidable accident, like it's struck by lightning, he is exempt. So again, if he's negligent, if the item was lost or stolen, he's responsible. But if it's an unavoidable accident, like a random strike by lightning, he's exempt. In insurance, they call it an act of God. You know, there are exclusion clauses and things like that, by the way, even in insurance contracts. So again, the unpaid custodian is only responsible for negligence, but not if it's lost or stolen. The paid custodian, because he's earning out of it, has a greater responsibility and is responsible if there's negligence, the item is lost or stolen, but not if it's lost due to an unavoidable accident like being struck by lightning. But the issue I want to bring up with Rabbi Cohen is, does lost mean lost? In other words, loses, it no longer is rendered in use, or does it mean lost as in you can't find it? Because I can't find this here in the Aramaic, what it actually means. But by the very fact that it is also struck by lightning as the term de loss, it means that the item no longer functions. So I think it means just more than just can't find it, just by the text here. Now, you've got what you call a borrower, and that's a sho'el. Now, a borrower assumes more responsibility. Can anybody tell me why?
Because you're kind of taking ownership of it. Why are you borrowing it?
That's not why. That would obligate anybody that's looking after it, the custodian. But why would the borrower be a higher level than a paid custodian?
Because it's almost borrowing is a form of it's conditional. It's stronger because if you do lose it, it would imply that you would have to compensate for it. So it's a conditional sort of lending. Conditional, yeah.
They all conditional.
Well, you're not getting paid for it. When you're borrowing,
yeah.
When you borrow, you're not getting paid for it. I mean, compared to when you're a paid custodian. When you're a paid custodian, you're getting paid money for it. When you're borrowing it, this guy's at risk. And is it making sense?
A little bit. Let's clarify it with the following statement. Again, the degree of responsibility increases or decreases according to two factors. If I'm doing you the favor by you going overseas and I'm looking after your stuff, but I don't need to use your stuff, okay? And I'm gaining nothing other than doing you a favor. I have the least amount of responsibility because there's only a downside for me and only an upside for you because you're not paying me. I'm not really deriving benefit. I mean, it's not to say that I can't use your TV while I'm house sitting. So that's what we mean by negligence. If you knock over vodka in it and you kick it in the temper sort of thing, or you really abuse it. But other than that, I'm doing you the favor. Now let's look at somebody that's paid. We're doing each other a favor. In other words, I've got a greater degree of responsibility because you pay me to look after it. But so I'm gaining, but you're also gaining. How are you gaining? Is that now I've got a greater degree of responsibility to look after your stuff and you're getting a great service. The borrower, I'm gaining and you're not gaining, meaning I've got everything to gain and you've got everything to lose. So therefore you say, why should I lend to you? Because my risk is at the highest. Yeah, you could only end up costing me money. And the law said he's right. You know, if you're poor and you need something loaned to you, the guy's doing you a favor, and you can't, if something goes wrong, leave him far worse off. So therefore, you assume that not you, any of you guys, but a poor person or the person that's needing the item, they don't have to be poor, accepts a greater responsibility because he's doing you the favor. I'm doing you the favor. And that's the basis of where it uses. So in this case, the borrower assumes a greater responsibility. Why? Because even if the item is struck by lightning, he has to pay for it. If it's lost, if it's stolen, if there's negligence, if it's struck by lightning, all of that is responsible for. The only thing is not responsible if it dies in the case of its normal use, if the item breaks. Let me give you an example. I've got a car. I lend you a car. Now, the car's been traveling for years. You borrow it for a day. And the engine seizes, okay? Because it's blown a piston. You never caused that. So it's not fair for me to turn around to you and say that you have to pay for it because it was accumulated wear and tear over a period of time. So the item that's breaking in its normal course of use, of which you borrowed for, that in that case, you're exempt. Does that make sense?
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, here, we're all taking responsibility, but your responsibility of payment increases when the guy's doing you a favor, and it decreases when you're doing him a favor. And if there's a balance between both, there's a balance between both. Okay.
Yeah. Very good.
So we're going to discuss a case of a renter, because which is a shorcha, because it's a subject of tonight dispute. Because some say it's the status of an unpaid custodian, and others accord him the status of a paid custodian. So there's a discussion between Rashi, Tosfot, Rashba, for the logic behind the usual sequence in which the custodians are listed in the Brisa. So what we're going to do is we are going to deal with how do you see it from the point of view of a renter versus, a renter, how do you see it from the point of view as a paid custodian versus an unpaid? And we're going to go through the two different sides of the argument, and it's going to be a bit of a group interplay. But we're going to go through that now. But just remember that...
What's the Hebrew word for renter?
I'll tell you now. I don't know if it's Hebrew or Aramaic, but it's known as a shocher.
And a borrower shoel.
Sorry, it's known as a shocher. Sochar, sorry. There's no vowels.
And so a borrower is shoel, a borrower. Borrower, Hebrew word?
The borrower is Shoel. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it seems that for a rent, it's a sochar, meaning that's not a ship. Sorry, it was difficult to actually determine that because of vowels.
No,
So what I was going to say is just remember that these damages go onto the actual damage, for example, of Rav Oshia with the four Mishnah damages and Sar pain, refuah healing, Shevet, which is unemployment that's related to Shabbat, like you out of action, Uvushet, and humiliation where humiliation implies. So where we ended off last time is we were discussing there's a Tanaik dispute. Okay. What is the status of a renter? Some say it's the status of an unpaid guardian. Other Tanoim say it's the status of a paid custodian or paid guardian. So let's just discuss for 2 minutes why would you guys think it would be a unpaid and why would you think it would be a paid? I really want a bit of a group discussion here.
It makes more sense to be unpaid because the renter's paying. He's not getting any money from the owner. That could be equivalent.
Just explain it better. I'm listening.
But a renter probably has more responsibility though, because of the fact that he's renting. It's for his benefit. So I can understand why it would go in the direction of.
Okay, so you've got to choose a side, Gav. Everybody here has to choose side. I'll bring both cases. You choose now. If you say a renter, I'm going to get from Kevin, Marco, everybody, and Arthur's opinion. So, Gavin, what do you say? Is a renter like a paid custodian or unpaid custodian, and why?
I'd say probably more towards a paid custodian because he's not volunteering. This is for his own good. He needs that place. So because he actually requires the place, he's renting from there. So he needs to take responsibility because he's renting from somebody as opposed to doing somebody a favor.
Okay. And Kevin, what's your thought on it?
Okay, so a renter, well...
We're talking here about not only renting property, but it could be like Springbok.
Go on, like an object.
Equipment. Yes.
Equipment, object.
Property. When we say person's property, it could either literally be property or their object that they own, which would be under the property.
They have an acharayas to look after and return it in the state they got it to if they responsibility.
Excellent. Okay, we English speakers.
And being responsible and then maybe it's better for the owner of that to get someone that he pays because then he knows it'll be looked after. It's in his interest actually to do that.
So hang on, we're talking about a renter who's paying.
Yes.
For use them. So would you say he's the status of a paid custodian or unpaid custodian?
Paid custodian.
Okay, why?
Because he has to be responsible for it, and he will be if any significant damages, he will have to make good and pay restitution for that property.
That makes sense. Makes sense. Marco, what do you think?
Because maybe sort of break it up. So we talked about negligence, all right? In terms an unpaid and a paid custodian, a paid custodian would be responsible in both cases, and so would a renter. Okay, came to negligence.
No. What I'm asking, saying again, I'm gonna for you just unpack the difference between. No. I'm just gonna pose a question to you, and just refresh your memory. Because we're saying a renter, there's a Tanaic dispute. Some say he's like a paid custodian in terms of his responsibilities, and some say he's like an unpaid custodian in terms of responsibilities. Because an unpaid custodian is liable if the object in his care is damaged as a result of negligence, but if it's lost or stolen, he's exempt. And a paid custodian has a greater degree of responsible and is liable even if the item is lost or stolen, an obvious negligence, except if it's lost in an unavoidable accident like a lightning strike. So what would we say with regards to a sochar, a renter? Would it be like a paid custodian or unpaid, according to the tonight dispute? Where would you hold?
I would think more in terms of unpaid, because he's renting and paying for the object, and because I would say it's closer to unpaid custodian, simply because he's renting it, he's paying for the object in question already.
Yes.
Yes, sure, if he throws it away or, breaks it anyhow, anyway, is responsible as with paid and unpaid custodian. But when it comes to force majeure, it wouldn't be responsible. But the fact that he's paying for it would make him closer to an unpaid than a paid custodian of it, if that makes sense.
It does make sense.
Yeah?
It does. And Arthur, what's your opinion?
I'm saying I'm going to go on the paid side, because if you pay someone to do something, it's like insurance. You expect to have that extra benefit of if anything goes wrong, they're going to replace it.
Okay, I think you've missed it.
Okay, maybe.
Because what we're saying here is we're saying, if you're renting it, what is your degree of responsibility? Not what, you get what I'm saying. What is your degree?
You mean I'm renting from someone else?
Yes.
Oh, like I rent a car, for example?
Yes, you rent a car. That's correct.
Okay, I thought so. You were paying someone to look after something for you. Sorry, I didn't understand the
No. We're talking about a renter. So is it like a paid custodian or unpaid? It's not a problem. Listen, sometimes I might have not made the question clear. It's not an issue.
Yeah,
and the reshit is a bit shocking. Okay, so where were you hold?
Well, still, I think it's a response. If I'm paying someone to rent their car, and something happens to it, I would be more responsible as I'd say the pay custodian for that, because I'm actually paying him. He's getting money for it. If you're getting it,
you're missing it, because the paid custodian means you are more responsible. Unpaid means you are less responsible. So what you just said here, the two statements did contradict, because you're saying you're paying for it, but we're not talking about where you're paying for it. You're paying me for it. So those two issues you're mixing up a little bit.
Okay, next.
Okay, so guys, you must know that all of you have Tanoim in your corner, or let's not say in your corner, you're in their corner, and others of you that had a different opinion, that there's Tanoim that are in your corner and you in their corner. So you're right no matter what. You couldn't go wrong here. But I actually to a certain extent on one of the features agree with Kevin and Gavin, but on the majority of features actually agree with Michael, and I'll tell you why. If you look at the reasons that we cited, the more the person is doing you a favor, the more responsible you are. The more you're doing them a favor, the less responsible you are. Why? Because if I've got to have all these legal encumbrances, Arthur says my internet connection is unstable. Can you hear me?
No, we can hear you.
Okay. Perfect. So if we turn around and say, Dave, could you please look after my place, my dog, etc., but I don't have money to pay you, I'm going to lead this headache like a hole in the head. And therefore, I say, listen, then I'm not responsible for anything. I'll do my best because I'm doing you a favor. If you're paying me, you're going to say, pal, I'm paying you for this service. You better look after my place. And otherwise, why pay you unless you're going to take a greater degree of responsibility? We're not talking about a borrower here where the borrower assumes the greatest degree because you're doing me the biggest favor by lending me the item instead of me having to go to Macro and buy it. Then you're doing me the favor and you need the risk like a hole in the head. So Michael is actually right according to this line of thinking, according to who I would personally side with. I'm not saying that Tanoim, Michael's right according to the Tanoim. Again, you're all right. Because there's some Tanoim that agree with Gavin and Kevin and some that agree with Michael. And I say there are elements of both that are correct. The one element of Michael's that is correct is that when you are renting to me, I'm doing you a favor. I'm paying you to use your item. And since you're deriving a benefit according to that logic, and I'm not doing you a favor, you're not doing, I'm not doing you a favor, but in other words, I tell you what I'm saying in terms of the balance. If we look at the logic of rental, who's gaining? Both parties are gaining. Why? This is why it's a tonight dispute. I'm gaining because I'm getting to use the item without having to purchase the full price of a new item. Okay? Because I'm getting to use it for a shorter period of time. And then I don't have to be involved in a bond for the house. I just get a short-term contract where I'm leasing the property. A earth-moving equipment from Springbok Hire and maybe paying $3,000 a day instead of $200,000 for the, what do you call it, a cherry picker, to put a sign on. So in that case, I'm benefiting as the renter, and you benefiting because you're generating revenue from me. So Marco is right in the sense that since he is renting to me and he's earning from me and he's deriving a financial benefit, he can't obligate me to the same degree as a borrower or an unpaid looking after because he's gaining something. Gavin and Kevin are right because I can't, for a fraction of the fee, cost you $200,000 worth of damages if I completely wreck the thing, because that's not worth the money that you'd earn out of it. So the aspects of both. Do you see, guys?
Yes,
Yep.
That's what I'm saying. There's always provisos. You can't just have one or the other.
I just liked yours in particular, Michael, because it followed a logical train of thought. Do you get what I'm saying? Based on the principles we've dealt with thus far. Not that the others aren't logical, but it means you were listening to the reasons of why it obligated somebody more. All right. So let's just move on. Well done to all you guys. And let's just have a look. All right. So what we want to say is that the Gemara questions the Mishnah's omission of Rav Oshia's additional cases. So he said, well, the Tana of the Mishnah, what's the reason that he did not teach these other 9 damages by Rav Oshia? Now, according to Shmuel, it's understandable. Why? What does Shmuel say Maveh means?
Tooth.
Yes. And Rav Oshia is teaching what?
It's man.
Correct. So it would go according to Rav. So what we're saying here, it's understandable according to Shmuel's interpretation of the Mishnah, why he never included Rav Oshia's other damages, including the ones that were mentioned with regards to pain, healing, unemployment, and humiliation, apart from the actual Nesic damages. But bear in mind, there are many opinions that include the damage of man, of pain, healing, unemployment, and humiliation. Rav Oshia just comes to mention that. He's not the one that was the only one that developed it. His major issue was on the 4 custodians, but he's including those other damages of man to man. So exactly as Gavin said, Shmuel is talking Maveh with regards to tooth of an animal. And according to Shmuel, he left it up because he doesn't review the first Mishnah as referring to man. When Shmuel is included in Mishnah 15b, do you remember that? When it's talking about man at that point, Shmuel can quite easily include Rav Oshia's discussion, but not at this point of the Mishnah. So can anybody tell me, now we've got a bit of an issue. According to Rav, who interprets Maveh as man, let them try to also teach Rav Ashi as additional categories as well. Why doesn't he?
I don't know. It's a good question. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Okay, anybody have a thought, or do you want to know?
I think you tell us. It's quite complicated.
Okay.
It's a tough one, yeah.
I tell you where we're coming from here. Is that according to Rav, there's two reasons given. Number one, Rav is merely coming to, because it's the first chapter, mention man just as a bullet point, as a reference point. Are you with me? And the details of man's damages are going to be included, not in a table of contents, but in a later Mishnah, 15b. So even according to Rav, it's just a bullet point index, the first chapter. Now, according to another opinion of Rav, Rav Oshia teaches slightly differently, because according to the opinion of Rav, also Rav is dealing with the damage that one's property causes to animals and one's property causes to man. You get what I'm saying? Again, Rav property is causing to animals and Rav property is causing to man. According to Marve. Now, Rav Oshia is talking about a case where man is damaging one's property. You get what I'm saying? So when we talk about Marve, it does constitute when Rav says man, but we're saying when man in his sleep breaks a utensil. If man spits on a woman's dress while he's talking to her, and he's got mulberries in his mouth and it stains, he is damaging her property. The case of Rav Oshia is when man damages property. And so this is going to be a discussion that we're going to discuss next time in terms of indirect damage, direct damage. So just one principle to bear in mind before we end this year. Okay? And this is the principle, is that two things. Is that how could a guardian cause damage? And the reason why Rav Oshia brings it is his negligence, his failure to look after it has caused the damage. And therefore he's listed as a damager. Does that make sense? So for example, if I fail to look after somebody's property and it gets damaged due to my negligence, compared to if I actually damaged it, is there any difference in terms of the disaster it caused?
No, same.
Good. Anybody else?
Same.
Yeah. So that's exactly it. So Rav Oshia is saying, here's as follows, is that you might say, well, what does a guardian have to do with a damager? We're talking about here that a custodian has not fulfilled his obligations and has caused damage as a result of his negligence. And when something gets stolen or lost or whatever the other cases, according to his level of negligence, as we said, the more he is paid, the more responsible he is. It's as if he did the actual damage. So that's why custodianship is included here. But one of the cases of Rav is talking about, when we talk a case of Marve, we talk a case with Rav where he actually is talking about direct damage. Direct damage. What do we mean? So at the hands of man. So if man spits, his force creates the damage where a person can slip on it, or an animal can slip on it with regards to pit. You get it? If he spits on a woman and stains her clothing because he's eating mulberries, he actually directly caused it. If he, in his sleep, he bashes around and knocks over a vase, his physical body caused it. Rav Oshia is saying a negligence, an indirect damage. Had you watched it properly and looked after it, it wouldn't have been damaged. That's indirect. And the particular mission is only talking about direct damage. So that's one of the reasons that Rav never listed it. And we're talking about damage with regards to man damaging articles. We're not talking about man damaging man so much here, because it's referring to the first Mishnah, either property damaging property or man damaging a property. It mentions in passing man damaging man. Now, what we can say here is as follows. When we talk about tsar, pain, refuah, healing, shevet, unemployment, and uveshet, which is humiliation, that's man damaging a man. But at the moment, actual damages occur where the man damages a man, the nezek, or an ox damages a man. And that's why these other issues of pain, healing, and unemployment and humiliation weren't brought in the first Mishnah. Because the first Mishnah is dealing with either somebody's property damaging property or somebody's creation damaging property. And even if we want to talk about man damaging man, it's going to go through it in 15b. Any other questions? We can end off at this note. We've got.
Is it going to discuss if an unpaid custodian, if he is totally negligent and really, he has to have some minimum level of responsibility. If he really is negligent, where he could have looked after the object on a basic, on a very minimal level, but if he will he still be liable?
Yes.
Even though he's not paid.
An unpaid custodian is responsible for negligence.
If it's like completely...
no, is responsible. What we're saying here, which I need to clarify, is what do they mean by lost? Do they mean lost as he can't find it, which would it go under negligence? Or would they say unusual loss where it was struck by lightning? Is loss meaning rendered the object useless? So that I just need to find out in the Aramaic. But when we go to Bava Metzia 83b, we're going to discuss that more in length. Please.
Well, the financial loss, the value of the articles diminished because of the damage to it.
Yeah, exactly. So you're right.
Before he returns it.
Even an unpaid custodian is responsible for negligence, but not if it's lost or stolen. So what we're going to do is tomorrow unpack in more detail why Rav Oshier's 9 other damages were not included in the 4 damages. We've touched on it about direct damage, indirect damage to property versus man, but we're going to unpack it tomorrow. Guys, I want to thank you very much for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you.